Alright, you guys, before we get started into the video, I'm going to shout out the Shogun tier on Patreon. So, this week's special shout out goes to John Larson. Thank you very much for the extra support. Now, let's get into today's video. What's going on, everyone? Ronan here, and welcome back to the channel. So, how did you guys feel about that last fight with Tobias? It was really something, wasn't it? Well, I gotta say, I did have a lot of fun writing that, and I was a little nervous that I wouldn't be able to deliver. But so far, it seems like everybody was happy with the results. But, if there's one fight that I have been anxious about since I started this project, it's the Ash versus Paul fight. But before we get into that, I'm going to need you to take a look at this analytics stat bar right here. If you notice, 59.9% of you guys that watch my content are not subscribed. So, if you could do me a favor, turn on notifications and subscribe to make sure you'll never miss another video. But with all that being said, let's get in to what if Ash won the Sinnoh League, Part 13. I hope you enjoy.
A battle, a year in the making. The question to be answered is, whose training style is better? The direct, power-driven borderline abuse of Paul, or the slow and steady, more nurturing style of Ash? Today's battle has more than just a title on the line. The virtues of an entire generation are in question. Ash looks on to the Pokemon that he chose, and to the one that Paul sent out. They stare each other down, as Ash briefly flashes back to the previous night, and a conversation he had with Professor Oak. Thanks, Professor, I got my last one. But Ash, that's only 5 Pokemon. Are you sure they will be there in time? Professor, they won't miss this battle for anything. But Ash, it's awfully close. Your battle with Paul is tomorrow. Ash tries to answer, but he's interrupted by Dawn. Ash, he's here. Oh, sorry, I gotta go, Professor. With that, the screen cuts out as Ash and Pikachu head outside. Looking up, he yells to his friend. Back in the current time, Ash gives a command. Garchomp, use Stone Edge. Across from him, Paul looks on, unflinching, thinking about the conversation he had with a person both opponents know well, Reggie. Paul, are you sure this is the team you want? Ash hasn't battled any of these Pokemon before. That's exactly the reason I want them. Well, I have to say, these are some strong contenders. The last 2 months of training in Kanto wasn't a waste. I know, Paul says. After I'm done here, there's one more battle I have to take. So, you're going to challenge him? I have to. If Ash could beat him, then I must do the same. But first, flashing back to the present, Paul gives his first command. Metagross, Meteor Mash. The two moves collide, canceling each other out. The power was even. Ash and Paul say nothing, only giving their next commands. Ash tells Garchomp to fly up, and Paul counters with Pursuit. Unfortunately, this allows Metagross to gain a speed difference, allowing it to hit Garchomp as it gets airborne. Metagross grabs onto Garchomp at the command of Paul. Garchomp, trying to break the grasp, launches a Brick Break at Ash's command. Garchomp's claw cracks Metagross over the head, stunning it in the process, allowing Garchomp to gain some much-needed altitude. Ash then gives the order for a Giga Impact. Garchomp uses its superior speed to take the lead, crashing into Metagross. The resulting explosion creates a blast of air, allowing Garchomp to retreat safely into the air, where it can recharge. This, however, doesn't faze Paul, ordering a move to set up the rest of the pace of this battle. Stealth Rock. Suddenly, Ash flashes back to the Oreburgh gym. Rorik. This is a problem, he thinks. Then, Paul recalls Metagross in an attempt to tilt Ash. Paul then sends his next Pokemon, Gastrodon. Stand by for battle. The slimy slug goos its way onto the field, ready for its first showing. Unsure of what Paul's strategy is, and the looming threat of Stealth Rocks, Ash chooses to leave in Garchomp for now, ordering a Stone Edge. Garchomp fires its mighty attack. It's true, there's no way Gastrodon can dodge this, but Paul has a very special counter for this. Muddy Water. Suddenly, a shield of water shoots into the sky, breaking the Stone Edge. Wait, what? That looks like... Yes, that is what you think, Ash. Your very special move that you used against me. It's actually ingenious, so I decided to make my own version of it. So let's see how you deal with your own technique being used against you. Realizing the only way to cause any damage is to get close, Ash chooses Power. Garchomp, use Giga Impact. The dragon launches itself toward the ground, pushing through Paul's counter shield. We've got this, he thinks, but Paul was ready for this. Ice Beam, he calls. Suddenly, the water that surrounds Garchomp begins to freeze as it crashes through the ice. Garchomp misses its target, crashing into the ground with the force of a jetliner. Paul smiles. You thought I wouldn't learn anything from our previous battles? Ash, since our last battle, I've been training harder than ever before. My Pokemon are in top form. Every battle we've had has been about this moment. You won't stop us. Garchomp! Standing back up, the pseudo-legendary eyes Paul and Gastrodon. Use Brick Break, Ash calls. Garchomp wastes no time, closing the gap between the two. Paul calls for another counter shield, but Garchomp is close enough to crack the slug in its head as it launches the attack. This has an unfortunate side effect. Garchomp is now within range, and Paul takes advantage of it, calling for an Ice Beam. Garchomp squeals in pain, jumping back at the command of its trainer. That was a direct hit, but Ash has no choice, recalling his dragon. Paul smiles, knowing that he's in the driver's seat. He's forced Ash into his plan. Now, it's just a matter of time. Up in the champions box, Cynthia watches with laser focus. Whoever wins this battle will be our next challenger, a voice says from behind. Turning, Sinnoh's champ sees her region's top trainers, the Elite Four: Lucian, Flint, Bertha, Aaron. So, do you have the same suspicions I do? That one of these two could actually topple our league, Bertha says. So, you feel it too, Flint says. Yes, ever since I first met these two young trainers, I've known there was something special about them. But there is more here than we know. Their bond transcends our understanding of time and space. Who will win isn't clear, but the battle is far from over. Back on the field, Ash is juggling his next choice. Paul has set the pace of this battle. I need to be careful. Whatever he has planned, guaranteed it won't be good for me or my team. Hey Ash, are you giving up? Don't tell me you're already out of options. Pulling out a ball, not even close, Paul. Abomasnow, I choose you. Santa's little helper takes to the field, ready to battle. Unfortunately, it gets a nice surprise when the ground gives way and 4 stones twice its size clamp down shut on it. Ash can hear its cries of pain. Abomasnow, are you okay? The boulders crumble, revealing a very angry but very battle-ready Pokemon. It remembers Paul in the last battle. This time will be different as its snow warning takes effect, lowering the visuals of both trainers. Paul calls for a counter shield as Ash gives his first command, but Gastrodon is caught off guard when the move wasn't what Paul was expecting. Grass Knot. Suddenly, roots burst from the ground, holding the slug in place. Unexpected, but not battle-ending. Paul calls for an Ice Beam, aimed at its binds. As Gastrodon charges the attack, Abomasnow quickly closes the gap between the two combatants, with an order that literally brings down the hammer, the Wood Hammer. Realizing this at the last minute, Paul counters this by telling Gastrodon to aim the Ice Beam at Abomasnow's feet, but it's too close, as the Wood Hammer ends Gastrodon in one swing. Saying nothing, Paul recalls Gastrodon. On the other hand, Ash and Abomasnow celebrate. They got the first win. Now, they have to keep the momentum going. Looking on from the stands, all of Ash and Paul's friends and rivals look on. Spread out around the world, we see multiple people watching as Ash and Paul battle. Past rivals, friends, family. This is a big event, and no one is going to miss it. Back in the battle, Paul takes little time deciding his next Pokemon. Drapion, stand by for battle. Abomasnow's snow warning is still in play, so visibility is minimal. As well, Abomasnow is still stuck in place from the Ice Beam it took. The problem is, does Ash recall it or not? Deciding he needs to keep the momentum going, he keeps his Frost Alpine in. Ash tells Abomasnow to break the ice that shackles it to the ground. Some struggling ensues. This gives Paul an opening that he needs to set up his next line of defense. Toxic Spikes. A burst of purple streaks can be seen vaguely through the thick fog as Abomasnow breaks free. Ash then calls for a Wood Hammer. Powering up its move, Abomasnow moves in the direction of Drapion, but suddenly it is stopped in place. Squinting, Ash can barely make out a silhouette of the two Pokemon. Drapion has used its pincers to hold Abomasnow in place. Wait, how? Ash, did you think I would let you get that close if I couldn't see? I'm in control of this battle. Drapion, use Cross Poison. The Scorpion fires the critical attack at Ash's Mon. Unable to move, Ash calls for an Icy Wind. Abomasnow fires the attack, but it's not strong enough to hold back the Cross Poison that connects with Abomasnow. Its pain can be felt by everyone in attendance, as the Cross Poison has enough force to blow away the hail. With Drapion taking little damage from the weather condition, this reveals the two Pokemon still in a deadlock. Abomasnow took the attack unguarded, but to Ash's relief and Paul's dismay, it still stands, but just barely. One more hit will finish it, and Paul knows this, calling for another. With no choice, Ash calls for an Icy Wind one more time. Abomasnow musters what strength it has left to launch the final attack. The two moves collide, but the result is the same at first, until a surge of power swells from Abomasnow. Suddenly, the Icy Wind gets more intense, pushing back Drapion's attack. This strikes it, finally breaking the hold. What was... It must be Blizzard. Abomasnow, you learned Blizzard? It nods, barely holding itself up. Well, let's use it. Abomasnow, Blizzard once more. For one final time, it fires its Ice Domination. Paul, however, doesn't flinch, calling for a move of his own. Pin Missile. The two long-range moves fight for supremacy, both finding their targets. Unfortunately for Abomasnow, the Pin Missile is too much to handle, dropping it. Drapion takes the Blizzard, shaking off the cold with minimal damage. This triggers a thought from one of the Elite Four. Well, you have come a long way since our battle, haven't you, little one? Bertha thinks as she watches on, with Lucian curious about Ash's next choice. But he won't have to wait long, as he watches a very familiar Pokemon hit the field. a vague call can be heard. Weasel, I choose you, as we move back to the perspective of Paul. Pathetic, he says. This gets Ash's attention, as Weasel is hit with both the toxic spikes and stealth rocks. Cries of pain ring, followed by Ash telling Paul that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Really? Garchomp? Abomasnow? Weasel? You're using the same team you battled with at Lake Acuity, hoping to turn their frustration with that loss into a win here. That's a very short-sighted way to strategize for a finals. I have a pretty good guess on what your final 3 Pokemon are. So, that doesn't mean anything, Ash yells in frustration. It means everything. Haven't you noticed? I've been in control of this match since the start. I've set up each separate battle to start in my favor. Look at Weasel. The first moves haven't even been attempted, and it's already taken damage and been poisoned. Face it, Ash. This battle isn't even over, and I've already won. Quiet for a few moments. Paul thinks he's made his point, but the silence is broken by laughing. Paul, you're a great trainer, but it's not over until the last move, isn't it, Weasel? Have it your way, Ash. It's not my Pokemon that will suffer. Drapion, use Pin Missile. Weasel, use Counter Shield. Ash's counter blocks the pin missiles. Then he commands Weasel to use a Sonic Boom on the ground at the front of Drapion. It connects, kicking up dust. This gives Weasel the opening to speed behind Drapion, putting Ash in a great position, calling for an Ice Punch. But this is quickly suppressed by the tail of Drapion, as it clasps around the neck of Weasel. With Drapion's prey completely immobile, Paul calls for a Cross Poison. Ash commands an Aqua Jet. Weasel puts up the Water Shield, cutting the damage in half. But it's clear Weasel is on borrowed time. If Ash doesn't do something, it will fall to either Drapion or the poison. Then it hits Ash. Weasel, inflate your air sac. Suddenly, the hold on it softens, allowing Weasel to launch a Water Pulse. This connects with Drapion's head. Then, Drapion begins to flail about violently, eventually flinging Weasel across the battlefield, stopping just short of the wall. Paul watches as Drapion bucks wildly, firing a Pin Missile. Weasel dodge, Ash calls. Use Ice Punch. Using its small size, Weasel gets in close, narrowly avoiding the Pin Missiles and landing the Ice Punch. Not wanting to lose one of his best team members, Paul recalls Drapion to stave off any more damage. Good, Ash thinks. At least we have a moment. But he knows this only delays the inevitable. Weasel is one wrong move from being knocked out. But if he changes, then another Pokemon will be poisoned. Then the Stealth Rocks. That's a whole other issue. But his thoughts are interrupted when Paul makes his next move. Shedinja, stand by for battle. The spectral husk emerges, levitating over the battlefield. This thing seems slow, Ash thinks. Maybe Weasel can get a win here. Unfortunately, this false sense of security is what Paul was aiming for. Ash starts with the Water Pulse. Weasel fires the attack. However, Shedinja vanishes from sight as Paul gives a command. Shadow Sneak. Weasel is hit with the priority ghost move, ending its tenure in this battle. Ash recalls Weasel, realizing that the last altercation seemed a little off. Water Pulse should have done some more damage, but Shedinja looks like it was just released from Nurse Joy's care. Plus Ash now needs to deal with the hazards that Paul has put in place. Well, I guess you're a buddy, Ash says, looking down at Pikachu. The mouse sparks in confidence, knowing full well what's about to happen. Jumping in, Pikachu is hit with the toxic spikes first, as poison courses through its veins. Then, the Stealth Rocks activate, but Ash has an answer to that. Pikachu, use Counter Shield with the Iron Tail. The mouse tucks in, spinning like a top, shattering the rocks. This prevents a little damage, impressing Paul slightly. Paul then gives his first command, Double Team. Ash counters with a Thunderbolt. This hits, but again, it looks like there's no damage. Shedinja then uses another Double Team at the command of Paul. Not liking the direction this is headed, Ash calls for a Volt Tackle. Pikachu bolts down the terrain, landing the devastating move, taking both recoil and poison in the process. But again, nothing. Pikachu is starting to look a little worse for the wear. It's at this point, Ash decides to consult his trusty Pokédex. This is where he realizes his big mistake. Then Paul chimes in. So you figured it out, Wonder Guard. That's right. If the move isn't super effective, then you won't be able to beat my Shedinja. You've wasted all this time, and now Pikachu is starting to tire. Like I said, controlling the battle from the beginning. Realizing Paul's right, Ash tells Pikachu to come back for now. He has a plan, readying his next choice. Infernape, I choose you. The Sinnoh Simian hits the field, only to be met with poison and the Stealth Rocks. Fortunately, it shakes off the pain, staring down its former trainer. It's here to send a message, one that Paul won't forget. Ash calls for a flamethrower, but Shedinja's heightened evasiveness allows it to dodge it at the command of Paul, landing a Giga Drain, sapping Infernape's health. Wanting to break this, Ash calls for a dig. Infernape tunnels under the battlefield, avoiding any more health loss. Or so Ash thought, as Paul commands Shedinja to use Dig, going in after it. That's not good, Ash thinks. If that lands, we could be in serious trouble. Then, it hits him. Shedinja can't dodge underground. Infernape, use Flare Blitz. Suddenly, a column of heat and fire erupt from the battle area, and with it, Paul's toxic spikes, and a faint cry. Moments later, Infernape emerges, carrying a very unconscious Shedinja in his hands, throwing it back to Paul's side of the field, almost to say that's only the first one, while walking back to Ash's side. Recalling Shedinja, Paul seems unfazed about his loss. He got what he wanted. Infernape exposed to the poison. Now it's time to turn on the pressure. Metagross, stand by for battle. The iron tank hits its position, ready for the next battle. Knowing he needs to be careful, Ash chooses to recall Infernape. He knows who he must choose next. Pikachu, I choose you. The electric mouse jumps in, being met with another set of stealth rocks. Ash knows he needs to make this quick. With the poison, Pikachu won't last that long. Ordering a Thunderbolt, Pikachu ignites a fury of electricity across the terrain. Metagross, use Psychic, Paul calls. This diverts the attack into the sky, canceling the move. Well, I guess we need to get in close, Ash says. Pikachu, use Iron Tail. Moving in for close range, Pikachu hardens its tail, ready to strike. Unfortunately, it's met with the Meteor Mash from Metagross. Then, something else becomes a problem. Metagross isn't letting up. If Pikachu pulls back the attack, then it will be overwhelmed. Thinking quick, Ash tells Pikachu to use Thunderbolt, but Metagross just tanks the attack. Then Paul commands a Psychic. The mental metal begins pushing Pikachu back with its mind. Slowly, Ash watches as his starter is forced into the ground. It's at this point, Ash tells Pikachu to drop the Iron Tail, then roll. This knocks it just enough out of the way so it won't be flattened by the massive club of Metagross's leg. It's here that Ash calls for an Agile-style quick attack to outpace a barrage of Meteor Mashes that come stomping down. This gives Pikachu the opening needed, as it's now right under the tank. Pikachu, use Strong-style Thunderbolt. Once again, it lights up Metagross, finally getting a cry of pain from the mechanical monster. However, this is short-lived, as Ash can see Pikachu starting to waver. Telling it to call off the attack, Ash orders it to return. Little does he know, this is what Paul was waiting for. The reason he hadn't recalled Metagross. With the final command, Paul orders pursuit. Suddenly, Pikachu's retreat is turned into a knockout as Ash watched, unable to do anything but call its name. Pikachu is unable to battle as declared by the ref. No, Pikachu, Ash mutters. Hoping it's alright, Ash runs out to retrieve it. As Metagross steps aside, picking up the electric mouse, Ash sees it's out. But with a little rest, it'll be okay. Walking back to his side of the field, Ash places his starter on the sidelines where it won't get hurt. Up in the champions box, Cynthia and the elites watch on and converse how Paul seems to have taken control of this match. But Flint is the voice of objection here. Remember the match Ash had with Wagner? He was able to beat the undefeated trainer. These two are rivals, and Ash has been playing catch up with Paul during the whole journey of Sinnoh. Don't underestimate the determination of competition. An interesting way to look at that, Aaron says. And just how do you know? Because it's something I've experienced before. Back in the crowd, Ash's friends watch on, unsure of what Ash can do. Dawn asks Brock if it's as bad as it looks. Brock tells her that it is. But this is Ash. If there's anything he's good at, it's finding a path to victory. Well, he had better soon, Barry yells. The stress of this back and forth is killing me. Calm down, Conway says. I've been running some calculations. From the numbers, Ash isn't in that bad of shape. Paul has been targeting specific members of Ash's team, but it seems that they are not coming out in the way he wants. So he hasn't fully locked in a win here. Why do you think that? Dawn asks. It's simple. Ash's unpredictability. Ash has already started slowly picking apart the strategy of Paul. Look at how he cleared the toxic spikes. True, Brock says. Let's just watch and give Ash the support we can. Panning over to Ash, he thinks about his next choice, when Paul recalls Metagross. Ash knew that it was weak, so this isn't a surprise, but that's what he needs right now. With grit in his stance, Ash readies the ball of his final member, as Paul sends in his next. Drapion, stand by for battle. The Scorpion hits the field, ready for its next prey. But Ash isn't worried. Spiritomb, I choose you. Paul's eyes widen as Ash's final team member makes its presence known with the Stealth Rocks activating, but Spiritomb comes out in the Keystone, allowing no damage to really occur. This is something that Paul had considered, but wasn't sure about, as Reggie had told him that it wouldn't even battle for Ash when he saw it last. But here it stands, ready at its trainer's call. It doesn't matter. Paul will take this Pokemon down like the rest. Drapion, use Cross Poison. Firing the attack, Ash simply smiles. Spiritomb, counter shield! The Alpha breaks the cross poison, expanding its sphere of influence to connect with Drapion. Though there is a type resistance to the Dark Pulse used, the attack is still enough to make a statement. If Paul lets it, the momentum he's gained will slip here. Knowing he needs to get in close, Paul orders a Poison Fang. Drapion closes the gap between the two with frightening speed. Ash, barely able to track the movement, orders a Protect that prevents the damage. But this is what Paul was looking for, ordering a Pin Missile. Unfortunately, this is way too close for a Counter Shield to be launched, and the attack lands in multiple succession. Oh no, Spiritomb can't block that, Ash thinks. Then he has an Ash moment. Spiritomb, use Shadow Sneak to get under Drapion. Doing so, Spiritomb retreats into its Keystone, rolling under Drapion. Poking in an eye out, it seems Drapion is starting to move off of it. Use Dark Pulse, Ash yells. Firing straight up, it catches Drapion, dead center in its abdomen, pushing it off the ground. Now airborne, Paul calls for a cross poison that fires the moment after Drapion leaves the ground. This connects with Spiritomb with the critical hit from being so close. Ash then calls for a Shadow Sneak. Spiritomb launches itself into the air with priority. Realizing this could be the end, Paul calls for one last move, Pin Missile. Spiritomb pushes through the massive needles, connecting with Drapion's abdomen in the same spot that Dark Pulse landed. The two crash back to the battlefield, with Drapion unable to battle. Spiritomb took some damage from the fall, but it was minimal. Recalling Drapion, Paul watches as Spiritomb stares back. This thing is dangerous, he says. Well, I have just what I need right here. Blissey, stand by for battle. The nurturing egg-like Pokemon takes to the field, shocking everyone. This gets even Brock's attention. Hey Brock, don't you have to have a high friendship with Chansey for it to evolve, Don asks. Yeah, you do. That must mean that Blissey and Paul have a really close relationship. But how, Don says? The way Paul treats his Pokemon. Why would anything want to be his companion? Well, just because Paul's training methods are extreme doesn't mean they are wrong. Everyone gets different results. Look at Ash and Infernape. They achieved what Paul couldn't. This must be Paul's answer to the question, is he wrong? Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Back with Ash, he's trying to see Paul's angle here, but he's drawing a blank. He decides to leave in Spiritomb for now, as is the best thing he has for the element of surprise. The battle starts with Paul calling for a Shadow Ball. Blissey fires away with a speed that it shouldn't be capable of. Ash counters with the Protect. Wow, that was close. This could be bad. Spiritomb only has one move that can hit this thing. Well, let's do it, Ash says, calling for a Dark Pulse. Paul counters this by telling Blissey to roll back, allowing the Dark Pulse to barely graze it. This allows Blissey to follow up with a second Shadow Ball as it turns from the roll. This one actually hits Spiritomb, forcing it back. This appears to have an added side effect on the Alpha as it winces in pain. Realizing he needs to be conservative, Ash recalls Spiritomb. What's the matter, Ash? Are you scared you were going to lose? No, but even a Zubat could see that battle was a one-sided. I figured, let's spice it up some. Garchomp, I choose you! Hitting the field, Garchomp is met with a Stealth Rock, but this is unfortunate because the damage it's taken so far has been great. Luckily for its trainer, it growls ready for a command from Ash. Garchomp, use Brick Break, Ash yells. Wasting no time, the dragon speeds in. Ash expects some retaliation on Paul's end, but nothing, as Blissey just takes the attack with a devastating thud. This leaves both Pokemon and trainers stumped, as Ash ponders why Paul would just let him land something like that. But the silence is quickly broken when Paul gives his orders. Ice Beam! Suddenly, Garchomp finds itself on the receiving end of a 4 times weak attack that blasts the Landshark into the wall. A first for this battle. Ash looks on shocked. Garchomp, he yells. Luckily, that move wasn't enough to end it, but the Landshark is struggling to stand up. Then, they hear something that's going to allow Paul to set the pace for the second half of this match. Blissey, use Soft Boil. Blissey reaches into his pouch, pulling out an egg it normally holds there. Then, in one giant gulp, it devours the high-protein snack. Now, Ash realizes why Paul gave him the opening, so he could get a clean hit with Ice Beam. Darn, I was so careful this whole battle. Then, one overconfident move and everything unravels. But Ash's moment of self-doubt is interrupted as Garchomp cries, taken to the air. It looks at Ash. I see. If you won't give in, then I won't either. Garchomp, use Draco Meteor. Spitting a hail of fire and brimstone into the sky, Garchomp fires its most powerful move. Paul is unmoved, telling Blissey to dodge. Unfortunately, its plumpness makes it an easy target, unable to avoid the whole attack. It's here that Ash sees his opening. He tells Garchomp to put up a Stone Edge defense. Now protected, he orders Garchomp to use a Giga Impact. The force of sound breaks as Garchomp rushes in. Telling Blissey to stand up, Paul orders an Ice Beam. Fortunately for Garchomp, the Stone Edge manages to hold off most of the beam, allowing it to land a supercharged move. It appears Garchomp has won this bout, but Blissey is holding on. Then, with one command, Paul gives the final order of this altercation. Return! Suddenly, Blissey swells with power, allowing it to slam Garchomp into the ground using the force of its own attack to amplify the return, bringing that battle to a close. Darn, Ash thinks. Looking on as the dust settles, Garchomp is down, but Blissey took some noticeable damage. It's definitely moving a little slower than before. Ash recalls Garchomp, thanking it for the effort that it put in. It massively weakened 2 of Paul's Pokemon, so they still have a chance. It's here Paul decides to recall Blissey. He seems to want it to rest. Then he declares, Metagross, stand by for battle. Ash knows he's got one choice here. Spiritomb, I choose you. The two take to the field, knowing that one of them won't be leaving this battle conscious. Starting off strong, Paul calls for a Meteor Mash. Ash counters with the Protect, canceling the battle. Then he orders a Shadow Sneak. It's here Paul calls for a Pursuit, hoping to use the size of Metagross to his advantage. But this is where Ash reveals he's been holding back. Spiritomb, Agile Style Shadow Sneak. This allows the Alpha to strike hard 2 times before Metagross can even land 1. This catches Paul off guard. The only Pokemon that he knew that could use that was Pikachu. Now this thing knows it? Well, then he will have to end this now. Metagross, use Meteor Mash. The Titan of Metal puts the last of its strength in the attack, but Ash won't let this hit, calling for a strong style Dark Pulse counter shield. What we see is a struggle between the physical and special strength of these two Pokemon. Unfortunately for Metagross, the strong style was made for overpowering opponents, as the Dark Pulse breaks the Meteor Mash and strikes with repeated hits like a whip to end this battle. Things are looking a little bit more even now, but Ash can't rest. Both of his remaining Pokemon are battle-worn, while Paul still has one left that is fresh, and he knows exactly who it is. But that battle isn't going to happen just yet, as Paul sends back in Blissey. Knowing Spiritomb isn't the best choice here, Ash thinks about his options. Ultimately, he decides to leave it in and let Infernape rest, due to the battle that Blissey had with Garchomp. Ash is banking on the fact that it's tired. Ash takes the first move, calling for a Dog Pulse. Blissey counters with an Ice Beam, canceling out the move. It's here that Paul calls for another Soft Boil. Ash takes a chance, calling for a strong style Dark Pulse. The move connects with a lot of damage, but this is where Paul takes advantage. He saw the weakness in the strong style, so he calls for another Soft Boil. Now Blissey is almost at full health, and Ash is losing ground. Realizing his mistake, Ash recalls the Keystone Pokemon. I have no choice, he thinks to himself. Infernape, I choose you. The Fire Chimp hits the field, with Poison and Stealth Rocks activating. Paul was hoping to put Ash in this position. If he can take out Infernape here, then Ash's league run ends. So he gives a command, Shadow Ball. Ash, knowing that this is his chance, tells Infernape to use Dig. Tunneling under the ground, Infernape dodges. Once it surfaces, it connects, but Paul calls for another return. Blissey swells once more, delivering a thunderous slam to Ash's fire starter. Infernape slides back, the poisoning taking effect once again. It flinches at the pain. Ash knows they need to end this. Thinking quick, he orders a flamethrower. Paul counters this with an Ice Beam. The moves collide, casting a veil of steam over the battlefield. Paul sees this as an opportunity, calling for another soft-boiled, but he hears, oh, there won't be anything soft-boiled about this. Infernape, use Flare Blitz! A surge of fire barrels through the cloud as Blissey prepares to crack its egg. Connecting, Infernape returns the damage it just received tenfold as Blissey barely hangs on with the recovered health. The recoil hits Infernape as Paul calls for a return, in hopes of ending it here, but Ash won't let it, calling for a final strike. Infernape, use close combat. Blissey charges down the field, but Infernape meets it with a fury of jabs, kicks, elbows, and knees, dropping Blissey and bringing the battle to a close. It's here that the poison takes hold again, sapping a little bit more of Infernape's health. Paul recalls Blissey, staring at the ball for a brief moment. It's here that Ash then recalls Infernape to give it a little bit more rest. He wants to end this here. Spiritomb, I choose you. Hitting the field, it bursts with spectral energy, once again being met with stealth rocks. Ash knows it has taken some damage, but he hopes it's got enough left in the tank for this win. Staring down Ash and his Pokemon, Paul knows the numbers are against him, but the endurance is in his favor. Electivire, stand by for battle. The Thunder Golem hits the field, ready for its chance at victory. This battle will not be easy for either side, but only one will stand victorious at the end. Up in the Champions box, Cynthia looks on as memories of her final battle before challenging the Champion League plays in her mind. Back on the field with Electivire, it wastes no time launching a Thunder. Ash counters with the Protect. With the attack blocked, Ash then orders a Shadow Sneak, but Paul won't let it get close, ordering Electivire to stab its tails into the ground and to use Thunder. This causes stones to burst up, striking Spiritomb. This stops it mid-attack, as the stones begin falling back in the same direction that they came. Ash tells Spiritomb to use Counter Shield. The Alpha bursts with dark energy, striking Electivire and blasting the stones in its direction. Paul orders a Protect to stave off the damage from the stones. This brings things to a stalemate, but Spiritomb is slowing in its movements. Those stones hit harder than Ash originally thought. It's here that Paul orders a Thunder Punch. Ash counters with another Protect from his Mon. This is going nowhere, he thinks. If we keep this up, Spiritomb will tire. Then Infernape will be at a huge disadvantage. This leaves only one choice. Spiritomb, ready yourself, Ash calls. It grounds its stone. This next move needs to be a clean hit. Thinking Ash will use a Counter Shield again, Paul orders a Thunder Punch, so Electivire can get in close. But that will only leave Protect, which could fail if used in succession. But Ash just lets the Thunder Punch come to the shock of Paul and Electivire. This is where Ash makes his final call. Spiritomb, use Curse! Suddenly, an eerie aura bathes Electivire, sapping its strength, but at the cost of Spiritomb, as it faints from the exchange. Recalling Spiritomb, Ash thanks it for the battles it's fought. With the curse it put on Electivire, things are now on an even playing field. Paul, on the other hand, has finally been tilted. Spiritomb was the one thing he had not accounted for fully, and now it's costing him. But after some realization on his part, Paul came to the conclusion that things are still vastly in his favor. Up in the Champions box, things are in a heated debate. It's gotten to the point that certain members of the Elite Four have started betting on the winner. odds-on favorite for Paul to win. Flint, being the forerunner of this, asks Cynthia if she wants in on this, but she just sits quiet, with her only focus being on the battle. In the stands, all of Ash's friends sit, watching, waiting. Now we come to Ash. Inhaling deeply, Ash readies his final ball. Infernape, I choose you. Hitting the field, Infernape winces in pain as the stealth rocks hit. This is the last time that will happen, Paul says. Yep, this battle has reached its end, Ash responds. There's no other way we would have it, right, Infernape? No matter what you bring, you will lose here, Ash. Electivire, use Thunder Punch. The Oni bolts across the field, its fists sparking with power. Ash calls for a dig. Infernape burrows down, avoiding the punch. Moments later, Infernape surfaces, connecting with Electivire. Grab it with your tails, Paul yells. Suddenly, Ash and Infernape find themselves in a really bad way. It tries to break the hold with a flamethrower, but this is stopped when Electivire lights up Infernape with a thunder at point-blank range. Electricity surges through Infernape to the point that it begins to smolder as its fur singes. The only thing that stops this assault is Electivire being hit with the curse. It breaks its focus, forcing it to drop Infernape, but there's no worry on Paul's part. Infernape is unresponsive to Ash's calls, barely having the strength to even open its eyes. With its ears ringing, the only thing Infernape can make out is Electivire taunting it, waving its hand, almost saying, "I'm ready for more." At this point, the ringing in its ears begin to fade, allowing it to finally hear what Paul has to say. "Look at you, you're pathetic. I was right to abandon you when I did. To even think you would be able to face me or my Pokemon in battle is a joke." Meanwhile, the ref is counting down, hitting the 5 mark. Infernape begins struggling, pushing itself up with all of it has left, just barely getting to its feet. But it's hunched over, like it passed out the moment it stood up. "Like I said, pathetic," Paul voices sternly, but Ash has a smile. "You're wrong, Paul. You should know better than anyone. When we are pushed into a corner, that's when our true power is awakened. Isn't that right, Infernape?" Suddenly, a burst of heat and pressure erupts with Infernape in the epicenter. This is the greatest blaze Infernape has ever activated, a combination of its will and raw elemental power. The power is so great that the windows in the champion's box are shattered. This power, Cynthia thinks, it's dangerous. Back in the field, Paul watches on. Can Infernape control this, he thinks? Smiling, Ash asks if Infernape is ready. It nods, ready for the next engagement. "Infernape, don't hold back. Prove your choice was the right one here and now," Paul yells. The flames surge as Ash calls for a close combat. Paul counters with the Protect. Unfortunately for him and Electivire, they are very outdated on their knowledge of Infernape and Blaze. Its speed has doubled with the activation. This allows Infernape to get through and land its onslaught, dropping Electivire. Now the roles are reversed, with Infernape antagonizing Paul and Electivire, but it's at this point that Infernape flinches in pain. The poison has ran its course and will take Infernape after the next exchange. "Electivire, stand," Paul commands. "We end this now." The Oni pushes itself to its feet as Paul tells it to charge a Thunder Punch in one hand and a Brick Break in the other. Ash knows this will be it. They have to contest both strikes if they want to win. With one final call, Paul gives the order to attack. Ash follows this. "Infernape, use Flare Blitz." Surging with flames, the heat begins to melt the battlefield under its feet as it skates down the field. A massive explosion rocks the stadium as the two Goliaths collide, with both coming out on opposite ends. The clash lasted less than a second. Infernape flinches from the recoil and the poison as it turns to face its rival. Electivire and it stare at each other, but Infernape begins to stumble, and a loud thud can be heard. The crowd, elites, Cynthia, and Ash's friends looked on in stunned silence. Panning to the field, Infernape is still standing as Electivire lay in defeat. The ref calls the match, with Ash as the winner, and the crowd cheering their newest Victory Road champion. However, Ash is immobile, processing the fact that they actually won. This shock is broken when Paul walks out to Electivire. "You did great," he says, recalling it. He then looks at Infernape. "You've proven that the path that you took was the best one for you." Paul then turns to walk away as Infernape falls from the intensity of the battle it was just in. Ash runs to his Pokemon. Infernape, are you okay?" It gives Ash a thumbs up, unable to do anything else. Relieved, Ash recalls it. The announcer begins telling everyone that the closing ceremony will begin in 1 hour, but Ash doesn't care, bolting from the battlefield. At the doors of the stadium, Paul, wait up. "What is it, Ash? You're not going to stay? You came in second." "Ash, I didn't win. That means there's no reason for me to be here." "Well then, what will you do?" "I'm heading to Snow Point City, so a rematch with Brandon." "Yes, he's my final challenge for the Kanto Battle Frontier." "What?" Ash questions. "That's what I did the last 2 months. I beat all of the other brains, with only Brandon left." Then Scott appears. "Paul, are you ready?" "Scott? Oh hey, Ash. Great job on winning the league. Your last 2 battles have really been intense." Ash tries to say something, but is interrupted by Scott. "I'm sorry, Ash. We have to go. Brandon is waiting." Paul then does something that Ash would never expect. He thanks him before turning to leave. Ash looks on as his friend departs to walk his own path, their destinies no longer entwined, for now. An hour later, we see Ash in the main stadium present with Cynthia as the elites watch on. "It looks like we're going to have a new challenger," Flint says. "That's okay. Some of us have been getting lazy," Bertha says. Aaron chimes in. "This will be the first battle that I get to have with Ash," while Lucian says nothing, just wondering about the path ahead of them. Back in the ceremony, Ash's friends stand in attendance. This moment is really emotional for all, but none more so than Brock. He's watched Ash grow from a trainer who knew nothing to a champion-level competitor. It's going to make the next part that much harder. The ceremony continues on, with Cynthia presenting Ash with the Sinnoh League trophy. She then takes the microphone. "Ash, you are now the champion of the Victory Road tournament, but that doesn't mean your journey is over. It's only beginning, as your Champion League run begins with the challenge of the Sinnoh Elite Four. Then, if you can beat the elites, you will earn the right to challenge me for the title of champion. Do you accept these new challenges?" With only one word, Ash mutters, "Yes," as it echoes through a cheering crowd. Later that night at the Pokemon Center, Ash and his Pokemon are eating like they haven't been starved for weeks. Brock and Dawn are with them, just watching on. They are talking about Ash's victories in the tournament. He's glad that both Brock and Dawn are here to cheer him on. He really needed their support. This is when Brock says he has to make an announcement, capturing the attention of everyone. "Ash, now that you've won the league, I have made a choice that I will be leaving Sinnoh at the end of this week." And this is where we're going to leave our story for now.
And that's all we have for the finale of What If Ash Won the Sinnoh League Part 13. How did you guys feel about this part? How did you feel about my reworking of Paul's team? What do you think about the note I dropped of Paul actually challenging the Kanto Battle Frontier in the 2 months that Ash was training? And, of course, let me know how you felt about the battle. Was it better or was it worse than what we got in the original anime? I'm curious. But with all that being said, if you guys can follow me on my other platforms, that'd be great. Go ahead, hop into my Discord and talk with the people that you may find there if you want to start your own content or if you just want to talk Pokemon or anime in general. Follow me on Twitter for things that I may post there from time to time. And if you want to donate a little bit more and help the channel grow, please drop into my Patreon. For only $5 a month, you get up to a week's early access to all of my What If content, and consider becoming a YouTube channel member. At the current time of recording this, I don't have any yet, but I'm confident that that'll begin to grow soon, because I'm going to be putting exclusive content on those two platforms for just those members. But with all that being said, at this current time, it's time to sign out the best way we know how, by thanking the patrons. Silverheart Soul, Robert, Vegito Gaming 78, Andrew McCartney, Holoziv, Joanne Rodriguez, Ruben Watson, Lord Explosion Murder, Assassin 139, Flyer 943, Shadow Dragon, Tavern Landlord, K McKnight, Kevin Atran, Drax, Adrian Carr, Dino King, Dylan Silva, Fox King, Warney Taylor, Plus Ultraman, Megar, Mike Logan, Team Valor, Kendall Green, Earth Dragon, Josh, John Larson, Forbidden Super, Dylan Nicholson, Gerald Smith, and Normandy 1998. Thank you all very much, and I will see you in the next video.